We're not running it, right? Sometimes when it's just in the agenda, it's hard to place them. Did you close that door or whatever you want? In here, everything. Well, that's what I'm thinking. If anybody, that's good. If anybody goes, not me, it drew me in because I, oh, where all the people are. I recognize. Leave it ajar or something, just so that 5 or 6 people walk down the hall. Thank you. Okay, so we're all set, so I'm going to take myself off. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lucy Robbins Wells Board of Trustees meeting for Monday, June 13th. This is a regular board meeting for us. And I will ask our secretary, Elizabeth. Actually, let me start off and say that this is the first time that we are doing a hybrid meeting. So I apologize if you see more of the top of my head than you usually see for these meetings. And we do have some people who are remote and some people who are here in this room with us. So it's our first time off trying that, and I'm sure it will go well, but there might be a few glitches here or there. So if you could just be patient and bear with us, I would appreciate it. So having said that, I'm going to reach out to our secretary, Elizabeth, and have her do some roll call.
Diane, thank you. I'll start with Andy Brecker.
Here.
Anna Eddy.
Here.
Anna,
you have to say it again. Here.
Thank you. Laurel Goodgen, Diane told me would not be here. Lisa Jones, is she still on the board or has she officially resigned?
She is officially resigned.
Pauline Crook?
Here.
Iris Larson, Diane told me would not be here. Leanne Mankey?
Here.
Scott McBride? Hearing a no. Maureen O'Connor Lyons?
Here.
Neil Ryan, Diane told me would not be here. Christine Shushin?
Here.
Diane Stam?
Here.
Fiona York?
Here.
Lisa Maston?
Here.
Karen Benner?
Here.
Kim Rada?
Here.
Sheila Rowell? No. David Nagel?
Here.
And Sharon Braverman? No. All right, that concludes the roll.
Great, thank you. And just one more look for anybody else who may have joined remotely. Anyone there? No? Okay. Next up would be public participation. If we have anybody on the lines who would like to speak or ask questions at this time? No? Donna, is there anything that you wanted to say at public participation at this time?
Just that I was here this weekend to see the book sale, and I think it was lovely. It was nice to see some children there as well with their grown-ups. So it was a nice display and quite a variety. Nice
Good.
to see.
Thank you. And we'd love to take credit for that. That's actually the friends of the library who do all the hard work and pull that together. But thank you. We'll take credit because Kim's remote. But no, that is the friends of the library who put together the book sales. They do an awesome job.
Donna's last name for the record.
Yes, Donna, can you give us your last name? I saw 2 names on the emails.
I can spell it for you. It's Kolaji, K-O-L-O-D-Z-I-E-J. I'm glad.
I bet you learned how to spell that when you were 3, because I can't imagine anybody anywhere knows how to spell that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you for joining us this evening. We will have another public participation section at the end of the meeting. So if you had other questions or comments, feel free to speak again at that point. From there, I will move on to the town council liaison. Dave?
I have nothing unless someone has a question to ask. There's nothing new in regards to the library in relationship to the last town council meeting.
Anything online? Anything online? No? Thank you. We'll move along. We'll go to the secretary's report. Iris Larson is not here. So at this point, I will say that there is no report for that. I'll quickly move into the approval for minutes, but I did want to remind folks and thank folks for being brief when they do give their reports, because we are having the library development folks joining us at 7:45. So we'll move into approval of minutes. Did everybody have a chance to read the May minutes? And if there are any corrections or changes?
This is Leanne. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the May 9th meeting.
This is Pauline Crook. I second the motion.
Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries forward unanimously. Thank you.
But this is Anna Eddy. I just want to note that I'm not voting because I wasn't here, so I'm abstaining.
Thank you, Anna. Next is the review of the annual activities calendar, and actually June is maybe the last meeting of the fiscal year, if not the actual year. And we do take July and August off from regularly scheduled meetings. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't sometimes have a committee meeting or a special meeting if the need arose. But we have wrapped up our 5K race. And the next time we all get together, it will be in September, and that will be our annual meeting. So we will have to start thinking and planning and figuring out what it is that we want to do with that. I think, let's see, pre-COVID, we used to do a lot of designs and planning and trying to get folks going. But now that we never know if we're going to be in person 100% or not at all, or a mix like this, it makes the planning for outside speakers and things like that a little bit more difficult. But just a reminder that the next time we get together will be the annual meeting in September. And that annual meeting, as a reminder for folks that are a little bit newer, we start at 6, I believe it is, on that Monday, the second Monday of September, with a business meeting. And then at 7 o'clock, we go into the full annual meeting. It's the 12th. So 9/12 Monday. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts? No? This is a bigger room than I'm used to when we're in person. I feel like I'm watching a tennis match to go through. All right. Thank you. Next up is the treasurer's report with Leanne Mankey. Leanne?
I emailed out the treasurer's report to everyone, just as a quick rundown. I don't have a final report on the race. I'm still waiting on a few receipts and expenditures to come in for that, but it was very successful. I did try and break out what I would call the special expenses that we would normally not have incurred due to the fact that it was our 25th year celebration, so that we can base that. But also keeping in mind that I think we probably had a heavier sponsorship, though maybe they'll return next year because Anna's so good at her job. That I think our sponsorship was a little heavier because of that. There's still one outstanding sponsorship that I have not received, and I'm not sure if it was supposed to be all in kind or not, so we can discuss that. And also, as I said, I do have some expenses and a couple of receipts that have come in June. I do ask as overall that for any expenses or anything like that that will end for fiscal year June 30th, that you get them to me about a week ahead of time so that I can close the year out properly. That would be greatly appreciated because I would like to get the books to the accountant for the filing relatively soon thereafter. We have some other good news to report. Over the course of the last few years, I've told you folks, Judy Agowski and I were both members of the Newington Education Foundation, which was in process of dissolving over the last few years, but they had earmarked the library as being the recipient of some of their assets when they did dissolve. That's taken a rather lengthy process to dissolve the corporation, but this month we received the final copyright for the design on the Afghan, so we can change it as we wish. So that would be great as a fundraiser. We do still have some copies of that or some actual items that were made by the foundation, and they donated to us that we could use or sell or use as gifts or whatever. But now we at least own the designs. We can change it and modify it accordingly. The other thing that we received last week was they had some monies in the balance of their treasury. And after their final expenses, we were the beneficiary of that. And there are no restrictions on it because their goal was learning. And our goal is lifelong learning. So therefore, we kind of ride along in the same premise. So we received $9,262.87 in unrestricted funds. So that's kind of a windfall this month. In terms of balances, the checking account after expenses thus far, as of May 31st for the race and other assorted items, we're at $47,051.47. The money market in Kingston, which is the unrestricted, is at $106,999.23. The restricted funds that are located at Santander for easy access for programming, et cetera, is at $29,211.84. When we get to Neil's report, I can give a rundown as well. Other than that, I think that's it, unless people have questions.
Are there any questions for them? Any questions for Leanne? Online? Thank you, Leanne, and thank you for all the work you did on that Afghan. I know we still would not have it if you had not put in all the effort working with the lawyers and making that happen. So again, it's great to have that official and available to us. So I appreciate that time and effort. Next up is the library director's report with Lisa Maston.
So I'll be really brief. We are still in the red as far as COVID goes for the town of Newington, but it really hasn't affected library services. It's really business as usual. We're recommending people wear masks if they have been exposed, but nothing has really changed. So I just wanted to let you know that that's where we're at. As far as meetings, with this meeting, the hybrid format is here to stay. I think it's, James said it was permanent today. So we are going to work with the town to see if we can have some sort of room set up at the community room in the future. The issue is really audio, and also you have to have the wide angle video for people to see who's in the room. So we'll work on that over the summer. Summer reading kicked off for the adults last Tuesday. We had over 200 adults sign up on the first day. And the children's and teens kickoff is this Friday. It's 5:30 to 7:30 at the library. Most of it's going to be outside, but they are going to do some crafts inside. Children can register online that day as well as teens. And they're going to have a bunch of, they're going to have a petting zoo. They're going to have glitter tattoos. The Little League, the girls softball team is doing an obstacle course. They're going to be running an obstacle course in the side yard. So it should be pretty fun, and that's 5:30 to 7:30. And the format for the kids is that they're going to be given activity cards, and as they complete things on the activity cards, they can win prizes. And that's pretty similar to the teens have to, they do submit a Google form about something they read over the summer, then they can get tickets for that. and that's all funded by the Friends. And also the schools are working with us to strongly recommend that the middle school students and elementary school students join the summer reading program, which is nice. It's not required, which it had been in the past, but it's strongly recommended. So we'll see if we can get our numbers up. The new sheds, I'm sure you've seen the new sheds. It looks really nice. The old ugly container's gone. And we actually used it recently. They moved all their friends, moved their stuff out of the library shed into their shed. And then with this book sale that they have that I'm sure Kim's going to talk about, we were able to go in. It's kind of neat, the inside. And then we have our little shed. The top was damaged, so it isn't working yet, but that's for our C-card deliveries, which is the statewide delivery system. You have to have a shed that they can come and pick up because they might come at 4 a.m. So they have to have a shed where they can get access to the books at any time. However, the shed we currently have is Rubbermaid and it's plastic. And the last windstorm we had, it blew it apart. So this is a permanent shed that's waterproof and it's more sturdy. But it matches. We have 3 little sheds and it looks nice. Yes,
Right.
the cleaning service, we love our new cleaning service. They're doing such a great job. We have 2 people, Jose and Margarita, and they come every day for like 3 hours and they're doing a really nice job. And you can see a huge difference in the library. It's so much cleaner and they're hitting all those areas that I don't think have been touched in years. So that is really nice. And I think that that's it, right? I think that's all I have to say. That's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa?
Hi, this is Fiona York. I just had a question about, the meetings are going to be hybrid and that applies also to public participation, I would assume. So we should prepare for both in person if there were to be public participation and over Zoom as well. Okay.
Right, so we'll have the library tonight, people can come via Zoom and we'll watch the public participation that way, or they can come to an actual meeting and then take their turn and speak. The biggest is the problem in our community rooms, we don't have the sound system for them or the mic set up.
Right.
For them to be able to speak easily or to project it over. So we have to figure something out.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, if I could just chime in really quick. I'm not sure Lisa's direct microphone was on. The short answer to that question was yes, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. You can't move it closer, but it has to sit on a pad.
Okay. Assistant Library Director's report, Karen Benner.
Just improvising here a little. Hello. I'm going to be quick as well. I feel like I've been talking about this for the past 3 meetings because I have, but Katie Cornell, our circulation supervisor, is back from maternity leave, which we're all really happy that she's back. It's a big plus for me because I get to step back from that direct supervision and move on to other things. I had 2 book discussions on the Stuart Onan's book Ocean State during the month. He's going to be live through Zoom this Thursday to talk about his book. People can attend virtually or they can come in person to watch on the large TV screen. It's sort of what Lisa was talking about. We don't have the capability of doing anything really interactive, but he'll be up there. And if anybody wants to watch Zoom on the large TV, they can do that. They can come into the community room and do that. We started this hybrid programming, I believe, at the beginning of June. So we have maybe 4 or 5 that we're doing this way, and we're just sort of learning how to do it. You know, so far we've had more people on Zoom than we have actually coming into the community room, but that could be, you know, the word isn't maybe quite out there, even though we've done the publicity. Sometimes it takes a little bit to catch on. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens with that. And then the other thing that we're going to do, probably it's going to be a soft open midweek this week, is open our meeting rooms to outside groups. So it's not going to be anything like what we've had before. Lisa and I have talked about the fact that we have the meeting room agreement that's really not, probably would have to be changed. You know, it does say you can have groups up to 60 people. So we're going to be working on some wording to put on the website. You know, I think you said you had looked at Avon or something, and they had some wording, you know, just about how large the groups can be. We're not going to be turning them over like we had in the past. You know, maybe it will be one a day, depending. And, we started the art exhibits in the community room again. Michelle Royer is handling the exhibits, the monthly exhibits. So she worked with the Greater Hartford Quilters Guild, and they displayed their quilts in May. It was really nice to see stuff on the walls again. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone have questions for Karen here in the room? Anybody in Zoom land have questions for Karen? Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate your report. Question. When we go back to having the board meetings in the library with that, it would probably be in the community room and not in Lionheart because of the equipment?
I would say yes, probably.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is the report on the Friends of the Library, and usually Sheila will give that report, but she was not able to be here tonight, so we'll welcome Kim Rada back. Kim, if you'd like to give your report.
Sure, I'm happy to be here. I will be relatively brief. A big portion of the report is our annual meeting, and I'm going to apologize right now because it wasn't until the evening of the meeting that I realized I hadn't sent out the information to whichever member of the trustees was going to be the liaison that evening, but I'm hoping that maybe, you know, at least a couple of people were able to sit in on it. If not, I have the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm very happy to, Diane, if you'd like, I could send it to you and you could redistribute it if you'd like. Just
That would
some
be great.
highlights. Let me see, where are we? I think Sheila probably reported at the last meeting that our April book sale, which was the first large kind of biannual book sale in 2 years, was very well attended. I think we made approximately $8,000. We're very happy about that. And we have dates for the fall book sale, which will be the last weekend in October. So that will be the 28th, 29th, and 30th. And I can correct that if I'm wrong. At the board meeting, we traditionally, as I'm sure you do, present our slate of officers and advisory board members, nominating committee. And that turns out to be myself as president again, Sheila as vice president, Joanne Cromwell elected as secretary, and Paul Delitowitz continues as treasurer. Our advisory board, we have added one new person, Christina Caulfield, who has been a very eager and a very welcome volunteer, and joined our meeting and decided that she would like to join the advisory board. Claire Thurston was elected to the advisory board prior to the annual meeting, a couple of months prior, but Claire also became a member of the membership committee and then decided that she would be happy to serve on the advisory board. Our nominating committee is Daryl Google, Mary Wood, and Mary Ellen Procco is the newest member. Let's see, where do I have it here? We did provide some certificates of appreciation. One went to Jamie Trevathan and the staff of the Newington Senior and Disabled Center. Without them, there's no way that we could do our semi-annual book sales, and Jamie was absolutely right on board the minute we called. Matter of fact, I think she said, gee, I was waiting for you folks to call. They really welcomed us. We had 11 student volunteers who received certificates of appreciation for all the work that they have been doing over the past year. Ron Demain, who's, I don't think he's a member, but his wife is a member, but he has attended, I think, every pop-up book sale, book donation event, and the last book sale, and helped us. So he also received a certificate. And a couple of board members who have gone off the board, and a couple of our board members who have changed roles. So all in all, it went very well. Our activity, besides the video of the shed being delivered, was several of our board members chose books that had a specific meaning, or if it was a favorite book or book series, and they talked a little bit about that. I've spoken with Lisa, and what we're going to do is set up an area in the library throughout the summer with, I don't know, we'll call it friends favorites or something. And certainly trustees, if you have favorite books that you'd like to share, please join us. We thought we'd put them out with a very brief write-up so that people can know, we can tell them a little bit about the book and why it might be a particular favorite for an individual. As Lisa mentioned, we have our new shed. We don't have to call it a container anymore. It's not ugly, it's beautiful, both inside and out. We have started storing books there. I think it gives us more space than what we had in the container. We've been able to move all of our materials out of the library's shed, and I want to thank the library and the trustees for allowing us to use that for quite some time. We're now looking at putting in some shelving units, which will assist us in terms of organization and some of the materials that we want to put in the shed. But all in all, we thanked the town because, and Lisa, I can't remember the departments that helped us, but they jumped right in and were able to assist after we moved the container out, make sure that everything was graded. There was a sprinkler head that I think needed to be slightly moved, and they were just right there doing a tremendous amount of work, and we really appreciated all of that. Other than that, we have had one very brief discussion about a possible Winterfest or Winterfest-like event, probably in January. We haven't really started meeting to talk about it. We will be soon and brainstorming some ideas. So more information will be coming on that. And I think that does it for my report, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Kim. Does anyone have questions for friends?
Can I just add something?
Yes.
Kim, can I just mention you had the porch book sale on Saturday?
Oh, yes, I don't know why. It's all a blur, so go ahead.
They had the Friends, they had the townwide tag sale on the 11th, and the Friends had a small book sale under, well, we called it the porch and the front steps, and they had it for 4 hours, and they did quite well. And so they had all types of books and children's books and AV. So that was something that I thought was nice that they did. And I'll just mention the town departments that helped them get the shed. The Parks and Grounds was the main department. They did all the grading and they got the site ready for the new shed. But we also had help from the building department and from the highway department. So they all helped us and it was wonderful and we got it done really quickly. So it was great.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And again, any questions for Kim? No, anything online?
Yes, just wanted to let you know, Scott.
Great. Hi, Scott. Thank you for joining. Just going to remind folks that we have moved the facility part of our committee reports towards the end, and that end is going to come up in about 15 minutes. So as we go through our committee reports, we'll be brief and then get to the meat of tonight's meeting, which is the building program for the library renovation and expansion. So with that, I'll move into the committee reports, and if there's no report, that would be a good thing. But certainly if there are important items, please bring them up. So I'll move right along into budget. Maureen?
No report.
Thank you. PEP, planning, evaluation, and policy. I do have one thing that I'd like to say on that, and that is that unfortunately, Laurel Goodgen had put in her resignation. So she's not here this evening. And she was a great member of our board. At one point, when she was a very new board member, I actually tasked her with 2 committee chairships, the House Committee and PEP Committee, and she did an outstanding job with both. And being the smart lady that she is, she says, now I want to focus on one, which was the PEP Committee. So she did that for a few years. So we will miss her. She very nicely said that she would continue to volunteer at the library, and she's going to work with Lisa and her staff to help weed out the collection. So we miss her. I don't have a more formalized report for PEP as we go through that transition. For those of you that are thinking about nominations and stuff, we have open chairmanships. So please think about that if you'd like. And that's all I have to say on PEP, unless anybody else had something to add. Okay, next up is investment. Leanne.
Well, Neil did not prepare his usual analysis, but if you look at the bottom of the treasurer's report, the first couple of lines will give you the Kingston portfolio. The gist of it is that we basically held steady from the losses we incurred last month. I have no idea where we'll be this month, but I have every confidence in Dean Spada that we are in good hands.
Great, thank you, Leanne. Any other questions? No, I think we're at the mercy of the market for now. Next up is House. I just have a couple of things. One, as much as we like to think that we're done with leaks, with this heavy rainstorm that we had recently, the drain seemed to have leaked. So it leaked through the children's programming area on the second floor and on down into reference and what have you. The very good thing about it is that when the leak started, our new cleaning crew were there. It was early morning and they picked up the phone and they called the town and said, hey, you got a leak. So the facility manager came out and looked at it and they called Lisa and things were able to move along much more quickly. So they're going to be looking at the roof to ascertain exactly where that leak is, but that's where we are. We had a leak. One of the other things, I have 2 more things that I want to say. One is that the walkthrough list that we collect in October is, I'd like to say 99.9, but it's certainly 98, 97% done. A few things that are on there. One of the things that is on there is the replacement of the draperies and updating those. That's something that Leanne and I have been trying to work on, and I thought that we might find time over the summer. So I would like to make a motion to ask for some not to exceed funding. And we would be spending that money on fabrics and hardware if we decide to replace the curtains in those windows to get through to them. And there's also some lamps in the quiet reading area. So I was going to ask for a not to exceed amount of $2,000 so that while the board is on the summer hiatus, we can go ahead if we are getting the fabrics and some of the hardware and stuff. If it's much more than that, we'll come back at some other point and do that. So again, I'd like to ask for a not to exceed amount for the House Committee to be able to purchase lamps, lampshades, curtains, the hardware to go ahead and do that for the House Committee projects. Does anybody have any questions? Online? No? Anybody want to second that motion?
I will second. Pauline Crook.
Thank you, Pauline, for seconding. And I guess if there's no questions, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor for the not to exceed amount of $2,000 for House Committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Motion goes forward unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, I stepped out. How much?
2,000. Yeah. Thank you. So that's the end of the House Committee report, and we'll move on to Fund Development with Anna, and we've got just about 10 minutes to get through the rest of our reports. Go ahead.
I really, oh, sorry. There you go. This is Anna Eddy. I don't have a fund development report right now. Leanne and I will reconcile the monies received from sponsors. And just to follow up with the 5K race, I do have some statistics to share. I'm just qualifying a couple of items, and I will distribute that report by email.
Thank you, Anna. And again, I know Leanne mentioned it earlier in the meeting, but you went gangbusters with the sponsors this year, and it was so very important to have that money to do the race and to have funding to do some of the other things that we need to do in the library. So every year, I think you've pulled out all the stops and there's no place else to go, but you keep going up. So thank you for your time and efforts in that.
I have more ideas.
This is Maureen. I just want to say, and we've all said it before, thank you so much, Anna. You know, you do a yeoman's job, and I think we didn't make any big boo-boos when you weren't with us at the race, but you were missed. And thank you again for all your very hard work and fruitful work.
You're very welcome, Maureen. And you know, it's what we should be doing on the board collectively, doing things for the library. So this is my contribution because it's something I somehow have gotten good at. And
God bless you.
And I appreciate being missed, but I did enjoy my time away. I won't make any excuses.
Thank you, Anna. Great. So I'll just interrupt for a moment and say, Leslie, thank you for joining. We're going to do the best that we can to finish up our few other reports by 7:45. So just hang in with us. I'll move on to nominations with Maureen Lyons.
Hi, you've all received the nomination form, I hope. If you haven't, just send me an email. I've received some completed forms, and I would like them by the end of the month, if possible, so we can start working on committees and stuff. Again, it's just indicating your preference for committees. If your term is up as a corporate member, if you're interested in remaining on the board, and of course, your interest in running for office. So, you know, all that happens at the meeting in September, and we like to get a head start over the summer. So please complete those forms and send them to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And some people brought their forms in, so I've collected them and I will scan them and email them to you.
Thank you. Okay.
So we have more.
And I have
There than you think. Right. Communications Committee was a committee that Lisa Jones headed up, and she resigned effective at the end of May. So we don't have a communications committee report at this point. And I would just say that as you're looking at these forms and filling things out, we are looking for chair people, so don't be shy. Okay. No questions or comments for communications, then I will go into old business and the library 5K challenge road race update. First, I just want to say thank you for responding in email to the questions of what worked, what we could do better, what happens. Again, it takes all of us to get it together. You know, Anna does an outstanding job doing the fundraising, but it takes all of us there on race day, on the day before race day, and really anything else that we can do to set up, whether it's the projects that we do beforehand or reaching out into the community. Some folks reached out to some of the runners afterwards to get some feedback. So again, I appreciate everyone's input, and we'll compile those things, those comments for the race, and make sure that we have them handy as we start to plan our next race. Okay, but thank you one and all for your support that day. Appreciate it.
Can I mention something? The one thing that has to be done, all the sponsors have been thanked, their thank yous went out, but all the race prizes still have to be done. And takes time. So,
So you need volunteers to
yes,
help put them together
that
and
would
mail
be
them out.
helpful. Yeah.
Don't be shy, folks. Anybody has time that they can do so. Some of the race, Lisa,
Yeah.
So-
just gonna ask for.
yeah, what do we need?
Last year, I think we had some sort of a form or a letter that you just filled in as to the company and what they donated and thanked them for that. So we might have that to make it a lot easier.
Okay, so we'll trade emails and make sure that that gets done. Okay, open board positions. We have several all of a sudden with Lisa and Laurel resigning. We have open positions on both the town committee openings and corporate openings. Just a reminder that if you are a corporate member, that means that you are able to hold office or be one of the officers, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer in the board. While it's tough to lose folks that are on the board, it's always great to get new folks in with new ideas and fresh blood. So if you know people that are interested, please bring their names forward. Anyone in the community is welcome. And that's what I'll say about the open board positions.
Question,
Yes. Go ahead.
as
Ma'am.
our Laurel is not present and she would be the one who screens this, we go to you with those names?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what happens. Thanks. So at this point, how are we doing on time? Pretty good. So under new business, we have the facility and site report with Maureen Lyons, and I believe Leslie's on the phone. Is Andrew Berger? Everybody's on the phone. Maureen, I'll let you do the introduction, and then we'll move into.
Diane, before we get to the facility expansion piece, just very
Yes.
quickly for the board and other interested parties, Gary Furstenberg, the town engineer, reached out to us, and sometime in August, they're going to start doing cosmetic fixes around, the parking lot and everything. And that would include removing dead shrubs, trees, fixing drainage areas, etc. So I can send an email about that, but just a heads up. So you know that that's going to be done. And Gary reached out to us, and it is the town's responsibility to do that maintenance, but we're pleased that it's on their mind. I'll send an email with some of the highlighted items.
Thank you. And I did see Gary in the hallways here. It's nice to be meeting in person, right? So we had a brief discussion on it, and it could be August, it could be October, depending on what's going on. So our concerns always are access to the library and
Parking.
coordinating events so that there's parking. So the October book sale, things like that, we want to work around and coordinate with, but thank you for that. So if you want to move into library development solutions and their plan, Maureen?
I see Leslie is on board. Are Andrew and his team here? Okay. Could you unmute yourself, Leslie?
Yes. Hi, it's
I
Andrew
see.
Berman.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Folks, I think you've all met everybody before. Andrew Berman is the consulting architect, and Leslie has been created the facilities study, and Andrew's associates are
Vinci So,
Vinci and I'm sorry.
Fatima
who's-
Shupur.
Okay, and they're with us.
They're with us. They're
So-
both here.
To my fellow board members and staff, you've all received the updated information, correct? And I hope you've had time to look at it. And I think in the interest of time and just interest in the project, that I think I'll start with Leslie, and if you could do an overview, or Andrew, whomever would like to start, and then I'm sure you all have questions, and I think we should get to the comments and questions as quickly as possible so we can get the show on the road, and then talk about next steps.
Okay.
Great. I think Leslie should lead.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
So,
Leslie.
for the benefit of the board, the library building committee contracted with Andrew and myself and Vinci and Fatma to update the 2017 facility feasibility study to create a library building program and to create a concept design for a reimagined Lucy Robbins Wells Library. And we have completed our work. Everybody has had a chance to take a look at those documents, yes? Everybody has them? Yeah? So I just want to summarize what the purpose of each one of those documents is, and then you can ask us some questions. And then I think, as Maureen pointed out, probably the most important discussion this evening is next steps. So the feasibility study back in 2017 was really a follow-up to some previous studies that had been done to assess the feasibility and need for thinking about an expanded and updated Lucy Robbins Wells Library. And we created a report at that time. It had a lot of data in it based on census and other demographic information we had collected about the town, information about the library and its use and collection, and came to the conclusion that it was important to think about renovating and expanding the library. And the recommendation at that time was to keep the original Lucy building and to think about taking down the 1988 expansion and moving forward. And my understanding is, even though we had a pretty solid plan and agreement on what we wanted to do, there were other building projects in town that took precedence over the library's building project. So you've kind of been on hold since 2017. And then my understanding is that it's your turn, and that some of those projects that had pushed the library project back have now been completed, and that there is some sentiment in town to revisiting what a reimagined Lucy Robbins Wells Library should be like. So the building committee and Lisa reached out to me and asked if I could update the feasibility study, and also at Laurel's urging, quite frankly, asked if we could put together a building program. And at my recommendation, I suggested, in order to kind of fast track this project, and to, because there had been some discussion with the building committee that we wanted to, or that you wanted to bring this to referendum pretty quickly, that we engage an architect, in this case, Andrew Berman and Vinci and Fatma, to come up with a concept design so that you actually had a visual image of what this reimagined library would be like. So what you have before you this evening are three things. The updated feasibility study, which looked at updated census information and things that had changed since 2017. A building program, which is really intended to be a guide to the architect in terms of developing a more specific design for the library and functional spaces and what needs to be included in that design. And then the third thing, which is the prettiest of all, which is a lovely concept design that really brings to life what we're talking about in all those words in my documents, and shows you what the possibilities are for reimagining what the library can be like. And that's what Andrew and his team developed. And in addition to that, you have some rough cost estimates that can help you make some decisions about how you want to proceed with this project. First, if you want to proceed. Secondly, at what level of scope you want to proceed. And then thirdly, we should probably have some discussion once you've made some of those decisions about next steps and where we go from here. So that's just kind of an overview of the documents that you have before you. And Andrew, feel free to comment on the work that you've done.
Sure. So my feeling is that the master plan that we've shown and presented here should be an indication of potential. It reflects, I think, great opportunity, keeping the historic building and imagining your area, but also offering greatly expanded. And the master plan is not a finished scheme by any means. It does not, I don't want to presume that we were able to design a successful new Newington library without the hard work, or let's say the persistent work of working together with you on this. And so this is what we feel is kind of a best initial offering to show that potential. Having gone through the process, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of good potential. You have a great site, you have a great historic building to work with, and I think it was quite apparent in our conversations up in Newington and thinking about it afterwards, what some of the major design issues are that need to be tackled and kind of transformed into positive things, whereas now they're perhaps negative things. So when we presented this last, we did get some feedback from your team, and we incorporated some of that into this. I think most notably, if we go to the view from looking from above, there's an aerial view. We indicated solar panels on the roof. We indicated it doesn't show very well here, but there are solar panels there on the roof, and it's a planted roof as well. And we worked on some of the landscaping to improve some of the landscaping. I think this is actually an earlier view.
Should I share my screen, Andrew?
Sure. Yeah. Since we did update the views a little bit, and while this is not absolutely critical to your decision-making process, I just wanted to show again that
if someone could allow me, if someone could allow me to share my screen, please.
Give us 1 minute. New tools.
Okay, now I can.
Super.
Oh,
Wonderful.
I see. Okay.
So we updated this image to show solar panels on the roof facing south. We've got a great exposure for that. An opportunity to do planted roofs. This is something we've done on a number of projects. So it's wonderful for controlling rain runoff. It's wonderful for the environment. It's a great means of insulation. And we did some work on the site. But, you know, all of this is just to say that there's an opportunity, I believe, on a kind of sound foundation here to really develop a wonderful building for your community. And it can be a very good process. I mean, I know Leslie has found this, we found this, and Leslie and I have found this working together, that the design process is also a good process of clarifying what a community is looking for in their library, clarifying the important parts of the collection, important programming, as well as arriving at a very fulfilling building and spaces.
Andrew, this is Diane. If you or someone on your team could just briefly go through, because we have some people in the audience that haven't seen this before. So if you could
Absolutely.
just go through, show where we have the original library and how we expand out from that.
Sure.
And if you're driving, you guys can show some of the renditions of the plans. And
Okay.
again, this is conceptual. This is not
Right.
already figured out and planned out, but this is to give us an idea of what it could be. And if we went in this direction, what would that mean in terms of space and usability? So keep that in mind if you're watching for the first time.
Right. So
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So this is a new plan that we did not present to you last time, and this is in order to illustrate the question you just posed. What is new? What is existing? So what's toned as brown here is the existing library. The original building, the original Lucy Robbins Wells building is right there on the left. And then the rest of that to the right is the 1980s edition. And what we're proposing is to reuse some of the foundation footprint of that 80s building, but to also trim it and then add primarily to the south, which is to the right. And so this black line is the perimeter of the new addition. And it will completely preserve and renovate the original historic building and provide a completely new addition as well. And they will function together as a single building. Now, part of this is a reimagining and a repurposing of the site. So what you see to the right of the building as white is the parking lot. And what we are proposing is to eliminate the existing parking lot and build a new and a much larger parking lot. There you go. If you follow the cursor to the south and to the east of the library. And this parking lot will not be, as we're proposing it, adjacent and accessed from the other parking lot. So this will be a library specific parking lot, one would hope. And it's greatly increased the number of spots. If I remember, there were 74 spots here. So here is the Reimagined Plan. One of the important design goals in our master plan was to reorient the entrance to the library to the south so that when one is approaching by car, one would approach the entrance of the library as well as it is now. One parks and then walks around the side of the building from what is clearly the rear of the building to the front door. So we're making a new front entry plaza with a pergola, with outdoor seating, outdoor space, outdoor activity areas, and then a new front door facing the drop-off, facing the parking lot. And one would walk in to a large, open, easy to navigate space full of people, collection, computers, seating. And off of that space would be a community room, which is at the lower right of the plan. The community room is accessible both from within the library, but also as a standalone facility. So that is to say the library could be closed. The community room could still be open and operational, still have access to bathrooms, means of egress, and a pantry. And within the library, we've tried to imagine what it is you would need. You need periodical areas, a lot of area for collection, computer areas, of course, staff areas and book processing, a much expanded children's area, which is on the upper right there, that square space. Children's area has its own outdoor garden. The teen area, also on the ground floor. The teen area could open also to an outdoor space. And then I think importantly, we imagine that the original building on the ground floor could be remain basically as lovely reading rooms. So through a light renovation of those spaces, I think they could all be brought into a really wonderful part of the active library life and help provide a lot of the important character of the library. And on the second floor, just the next plan, here we go. We're providing a lot more open space for seating, for collection, a number of private study and co-working rooms to provide some acoustical isolation for the sake of meetings, conferences, tutoring, study. Project area, could call it a maker space or a digital lab type area. A conference room, teaching space, and then even a kind of quiet reading room within the larger library. And all of this, we imagine, can have a lot of daylight, a lot of good views to the south, out to the park, out to the greenery. If we go to the next, please. And then the basement plan is to absorb the basement of the original building, reuse the elevator that's already there, and then add more space in the basement for storage and book processing. Next, please. So this is a view from the street, showing the original building without the 1980s addition, which kind of wraps around and forms a sort of visual clamp on the building. So it's taken off. And then the new building, you can see behind it. And to the right is an outdoor patio space that I think could be, a 3-season space for the library, place for book sales. We thought that your marathon or half marathon event, whatever it is, it's good, I think, to really think about the site as a whole and see how much the site can be activated and brought into the kind of energy and utilization of the library. Next, please. Excuse me, this is a view from the south at the drop-off area. So you can see, again, the kind of plaza being created between the drop-off and the front door with some outdoor seating under the canopy of the second floor next to the entry, with a pergola and outdoor seating to the right of the entryway. And then imagining that the building, especially on the second floor, can be very transparent, allowing great views out, but also good views in, which is, I think, an important thing to show the community that the library is alive. Lights are on, people are there. There's a lot of activity. And then the next view, please. And then this is an aerial view to provide some kind of overall orientation. So that parking lot in the foreground is the parking lot I spoke of, the library parking lot. And you can see a drop-off area, the ramp, the steps up to the front door, and the pergola in front, kind of forming a plaza. So I think that was the last of our images, and I hope that was a good, just very, very brief orientation. There's obviously a lot of detail we could go into, but I think for the purposes of just showing potential, I hope the images convey that well.
Great. Andrew, this is Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
How are you?
Good.
On the second floor, if we could go to that view, where do you envision the staff offices? In this area?
So we here envision in the upper right, some staff
Okay.
offices. And then we envisioned that some of the second floor spaces of the original building, the three spaces in the center, could also be staff areas
Mm-hmm.
conveniently. It's not to say that they have to, and part of working together as a team would be to really figure out how much staff area do you need versus other areas. But we thought that because those spaces are a bit more remote from the body of the addition,
Mm-hmm.
they were particularly well suited for the more private staff areas. And then we have some more public staff areas in the
Right.
upper right.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
more concerned about the private staff areas. Also space for the friends of the library.
Yes.
Um,
So that space, we thought space at number 6 there, that for example, could be a good friend space,
mhm.
or the kind of mirror space of that. There could be a friend space. And then if the space requirements of the friends area need to be actually much larger, what's shown as a conference room could potentially be the friends area.
And of course, all the details, once this all comes to fruition in whatever iteration, then those details are worked out, I understand.
Absolutely.
And for my friend and colleague, Leanne Mankey, we want a little office for the board of directors as well.
Uh-huh.
And we'll find a spot for the
Yes.
files.
Yes, absolutely. Everything here is really fluid, if you will,
Yes.
in the sense that
Mhm.
this is the best assumption at the moment of what the library needs. But once we sit down and talk and test things out, the plans evolve. But I think what I feel we've established so far is a good feel for the general orientation, the general relationship of spaces, and the real opportunity to save and improve the original building and make it a kind of part of the new library. I think that's an important objective here.
Right. And I really love the way it kind of takes the old and the new and blends it and says, this is what Newington is all about, right? We're about the
Right.
past, but we're about the future. And you have some variables in this plan. You can increase the amount of seating, you can reduce the amount of seating. In the materials I've given you, I've suggested that you reduce the size of the collection. So once your collection is right sized, we may need more stacks, less stacks. We won't know. Those are, again, details that you would work on as you refine the design. But you have enough opportunity here, I think, to think about the spaces and how you want to use them, that you're going to be able to get everything you want, I think.
And hopefully we'll take this design, or again, an iteration of it, take us into the future so that 10 years or 20 years from now, we're not looking at another renovation project. We're just
Exactly. I
rearranging.
Yes, exactly. So I can tell you that when I worked with Andrew on the Princeton project, that was kind of our guiding principle as well, that we knew things would not stay that way forever. And so it was purposely designed in a way that we could move furniture around and rearrange things as things change. And I'll just share a little anecdote with you. I was watching Tina Brown interviewed on TV the other day, Tina Brown being the Condé Nast person. And she came right out and said, basically, magazine publishing is over. It's got maybe 10 years, but we are going to move away from physical magazine. So the magazine room becomes something that we need to think about, as an immediate way to provide what is still in print, but also in a way that allows it to be easily adapted for another use when we move to fully digital content.
Mhm. I totally concur.
But yes.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things of working right now with libraries is that we're so aware of the fact that we're in a period of great change.
Right.
And it's also a bit humbling to know that we don't really know all the things that are going to transpire. But something that's been clarifying to me is that it's increasingly clear that the library is the social hub of a community, and that brings with it a great responsibility and a great opportunity too. It's a place to provide for everybody, all age, all background. Some of those people are really avid readers. Some of those people perhaps aren't going to read at all, but they're still going to be important stakeholders in the library and by extension the community. And so it's kind of cultivating the space for public use of all types, all of which kind of fall under the umbrella of the contemporary library.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely talked about this with Princeton, with Leslie. And an example to use, you mentioned a periodical room. We made a lovely periodical room, but the periodical room in the evening can also be the poetry reading room or the author presentation room. It was set up for an immediate transformation within the span of the afternoon from one purpose to another purpose, because this kind of adaptability is now fundamental to a library.
Right. And that goes for the book stacks as well, because and the media, how we house the media. We don't know how much longer DVDs will last. I suspect that's not going to be much longer either. And we will have increasing pressure on libraries to subscribe to more and more streaming services so that people can get access. But we don't want to build a library that has fixed stacks that can't be moved, because as collections change, formats change, and as the amount of collection changes, and maybe there is a shift, I'm not making a prediction right now, but a shift to more digital downloads of books, we don't need as many stacks. So it's sort of a moving target, but as Andrew said, I think it's a really exciting time to be thinking about what a contemporary library is in a much broader sense than just having stacks end on end and books end on end where people are going and grabbing something and leaving. What we're saying in this plan is we want them to see the library as a destination and a place to spend time and to learn in many different ways and to connect with other people in the community. Because as you think about what's going on in town, there really aren't other spaces like this. And it becomes an important part of building that, the kind of community you want, the kind of civic engagement and communication you want as the community grows and changes. I mean, we may not even have fixed computers in this new library by the time it gets built, right?
Right.
That's right.
Okay, you in Q&A?
So I thank you for this presentation and overview. There are some people in the room that while they've seen the material, they haven't had a chance to ask questions and go through that. I just want to share one of the things that I like about it is that while today we've tried to modernize or capitalize on some of the space we had by having moving shelves, we know that when we have to move that, we sometimes have to close down the library or do things after hours and then put them all back before we open up again. So by having the collection, from what I saw around the outside, you still have access to it, but it's not blocking the traffic. As you said, Leslie, there's no stacks and stacks and stacks of materials that people have to kind of work around or move around with. I am going to ask the board members if they have questions or thoughts, and I will give everybody who wishes an opportunity to speak and get through to that. Again, I want to emphasize that this is a conceptual idea. Because you see this picture here like this, that doesn't mean that when we get through with the referendum in the building, that this is exactly what we're going to have. We need to go into some more details and, plan out what is it that we actually need, where would we put it, how would it go? But I think this really helps folks understand what could be there. And that it's just not going to be a long brick extension coming out the back of the library, right? It can be a true asset for our town, a destination, if you will, for what happens, a place for people to come, to congregate, to meet, and go through from that end. I did have one or two questions in the building program, and that was about the LEED silver or gold building, and I'm not quite sure what that means. And then one of the other questions was a backup generator, but that's in the building program overview.
Right. Yeah, those were my questions as well. So, Andrew, you probably can speak to this better than I can, but many libraries that are building today are trying to achieve LEED status, which is silver is less than gold. Gold's kind of, there's nothing higher than gold, right?
There's platinum.
Platinum. Okay, there's platinum. So it's being very conscious about installing environmentally friendly systems, and that sometimes costs some more money, maybe sometimes it doesn't, but that was a question for you, whether or not you wanted to have that be part of the building program. And the same.
Diane, if I can jump in, it's Andy Brecker. Having been in the building trades, I would advocate that we not seek LEED silver, gold, or platinum. As an example, so we're all sitting here at a wooden table, and I sold some of these materials, and the LEED silver, for instance, and gold and platinum is all about where this wood is sourced from. And to make sure that you don't have it come from Canada in a forest where they have been cutting wood for 100 years. It needs to come from an older growth forest or something like that. The bottom line is it makes a lot of money for the manufacturers, and it's very questionable as to the impact it actually has on the environment. So we may choose to do that, but I would not put it in your report that this is something that we are initially seeking. As for the generator, I would advocate, yes, we absolutely do want a old facility generator.
This is
I
Leanne
believe those are
Maggie.
your
I
two
agree with
questions.
that. I agree with Andy. After my years in the trades, leads can make it very, and particularly in this particular environment, when sourcing of supplies is already extremely difficult, that could be again, we could potentially have that as a goal, but I wouldn't make it a requirement within the report. As the emergency management, again, that feeds into different departments in town, but I do know that emergency management we're always looking in terms of being prepared for an emergency. And if we have another facility that is ready for that, that is a really good thing for the town, not just for the library.
So I'm hearing consensus from folks that have gone through the building things before, that while it is good to have environmentally sound and friendly principles, we don't necessarily want to go all the way to the LEED or gold certification standard, because that would tie our hands. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't have solar panels on the roof, for instance. So there are ways that we can do
Correct.
That's
smart,
correct. I would,
conservative, sustainable things without going right up to living to those standards for the reasons that were brought forward here.
right. This is Andrew Berman. I would like to say that, any project that we would be involved with, we would have a very high ambition for providing a sustainable project, sustainable in, using the resources as best as possible, the resources being your property, the land, the buildings that you have, creating a building that is as sustainable going forward as possible, very well insulated, maximizing use of natural light, high level of quality within the space, environmental quality. Would, of course, want to manage the rainwater and the sunlight and the solar power, all of this. So it's just to say that LEED, it does not, what one can meet and exceed the goals of LEED without having the LEED certification. What the LEED certification does is it does create a kind of checklist in which one has to then kind of be in search of points within that checklist. And so it prescribes certain methods of reaching certain sustainable ends. But one can meet or exceed those sustainable ends without subscribing to the checklist.
Oops, he froze. Okay.
This
So I
is
can
Leanne
certainly-
Mankey. I have a question regarding, you were talking about some of that, and it does feed into my question regarding the atrium. And originally we had talked about, and again, I know this is all conceptual, we talked about skylights, which are now solar panels. My concern here, though solar panels is the ideal here, I am concerned about atrium because of noise. And I guess I'm looking for your thinking as to why this would be advantageous besides just a viewpoint, because we do have space and the noise from the lower level that particularly carries up. But now that we have solar panels, what are we doing to our light in this particular conceptual design? Now that we don't have the light from above, because if I'm looking at the plan correctly, you have outside, on either side of the upper level, you have, and also down below, you have the walls that would encompass, say, for example, the children's area and things like that. Are those glass walls so that light can come in from the windows on the outside of the building? Okay.
Yes, all of the occupiable spaces, let's call them the program spaces, the spaces for people that have windows, have light, have views of green. If we can look at the aerial view, it's not clear from this view, but those are solar panels and they are facing south. But what you don't see is there's still the glass facing north.
Oh, okay, so there is the window there, all right.
There is
okay.
window there. So
All right, I just was
with
concerned
these-
about light.
Yeah, so we're imagining that there's the opportunity to bring in a lot of light from above. The reason why we're showing it as north light is because it's a more constant light during the course of the day. It's a light that doesn't contribute to the heat gain in the building, and it's not so bright that you might have to manage it with shades, for example. But I think there's the opportunity to have light from above, to have a very illuminated space. Part of what that does is it creates just comfort for people and provides a kind of internal life to the building. It might also help reduce some of your energy costs for lighting. So it's a combination of many things that I think creates ultimately a really sustainable environment.
So you're saying as on each one of those solar panels on the other face is like a clear story glass,
That's
right?
right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And the glass faces north and the panels face south.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
It was a good question.
Andy, you had another question?
I have two categories of comments. The first is kind of some housekeeping. I'm pretty much assuming that you're done writing and creating, but I would ask you to correct some inconsistencies that you have. In at least 3 places, you still indicate the building size at 44,506 square feet, even though you have increased it to 51,925, as shown on LDS's page 30 of their report, and Andrew on your drawings and the building program, page 17. So those should be consistent, as should the cost estimates. You've got a cost estimate in the body of the report of $25,209,275, and the cost estimate table and Andrew's drawings, I think. No, I'm sorry. It's just the cost estimate table has that cost at $37,642,075. I'd also suggest you round that off to 37.6 million, so as not to imply a level of precision that doesn't exist. So those are just kind of some housekeeping things.
Sure.
My more important concern is that it's very clear that your experience, your team's experience, is very much in addressing operational issues for libraries. You guys really are very good at getting into the weeds and the specifics about how a modern library should and could function. Unfortunately, to me, we're calling this a reimagination, but it's not very imaginative. I mean, it's there. It's an imaginative in terms of comparing it to what we already have. But all these things that we gave you in the feature list are muted. And there were opportunities on page 2, the items considered by the consultants. Pages 2 and 3, the recommendations. Pages 6 and 7, what does all this data tell us? Pages 10 and 11, the space deficiencies. Did a little bit better on page 25 and 26 in terms of recommendations, but the idea that this is an exciting, imaginative, inspirational place, I'm sorry, it doesn't come through. And I'll be specific here. You know, we talked about super powerful Wi-Fi and modern audiovisual and security devices. Where's the lecture hall? We talked a lot about where's the lecture hall. We have a community room that's probably too big, but you do need a community room where you can have the types of programs that take place on a flat floor as opposed to a lecture hall with a sloped floor with great sight lines. You know the difference, right? All of the activities we talked about on the roof, they're not there, okay? The high-powered telescope, the launching pad for drones, the weather station, not there. The supercomputing lab, not there. The soundproof multimedia and digital music lab, and that's not a shared space. That has to be uniquely designed so that it's soundproof. The digital art, photo, and manuscript lab you have combined with the makerspace. Those are two separate and distinct things. The idea of having a biochemistry space where high-end microscopes and built-in cameras, missing. The video wall, big deal. Where's that video wall going to be? And the library of things, completely omitted. And also, I would like to see, at least on the drawings, a placeholder for the statement art piece that we want to see outside. Also, I had asked you to beef up the interrelationship of the library with the school system. And then finally, I had asked you to delete the staff toilets, but they're still there. So please don't take these comments in the wrong vein, but I'm struggling with how we're going to position your report and still go to the town council with the vision, with the imagery of a library that no one else has seen before. So if you could help us do that, I would really appreciate it.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
Andy, I think, Leslie, do you want to respond first?
Well, I'm probably going to ask the same question you're going to ask, but the question I have for Andy and others is, are those things that you want to see in the narrative reports that I've written, or do you want to also see them reflected in the concept plan?
Both.
Okay.
If it's in the narrative, it should be in the concept plan.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that I understand what you're saying, Andy, and I think we can reference them, but until you get into design and thinking about how you want this space to work. So for example, let's take the drone launching pad. You know, Andrew's now suggesting a planted roof with solar panels, which, you know, we'd have to rethink where a drone launching plan goes in that scheme, or does it go on the roof, or does it go on the ground someplace in the parking lot? So I kind of feel like those are things we can mention, but that we shouldn't necessarily be changing the concept plan at this point to incorporate that.
This is Maureen, and just another country heard from. And I appreciate what your thoughts are, Andy Brecker. I'm just going to say this. I think what Leslie just said about the narrative being, these wish list being mentioned in the narrative is fine. I wouldn't want to see them on the plan. Quite frankly, I don't think the town is going to yay or nay this based on a telescope on the roof. And that's, I wouldn't want to see, it's a wonderful thought, but it's a little too much perhaps. And I don't want to have the town, whomever that may be, focusing on, well, that looks kind of silly, let's not do that. And then all of a sudden we have a 2-foot addition. I would prefer to see it in the narrative. Again, just my opinion. The wish list type thing, maybe a little more detail, but I wouldn't want to see it in the actual design.
Well, Maureen, it's Andy Brecker again. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into a debate here, but let me go back to what I believe is the original strategy for trying to get this renovation and expansion done. And that is, even though I have Councilor Nagel sitting next to me, I do not believe that our current town council, as composed, wants to support spending tens of millions of dollars on a new library. I think the only way that this gets done is at a referendum where the people of Newington see what the magic could be, what this vision, what a library like this could do for them. All sorts of people, and there's a lot of great stuff in Leslie's report about equity and inclusion and all those things. We have so many things to appeal to so many people. That is who we are appealing to. I don't expect that this town council would support a telescope or anything else for that matter. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but it's, this is a town council that's focused on keeping our mill rate from going up, not on spending money. So here's the reason to spend. This is going to be $45 million we're talking about, probably the biggest project ever in town. And if we're going to spend that much money, it damn well better have every bell and whistle and thing that you can conceive of in a library. This is my personal opinion. Everybody's going to hear about it, but it's my personal opinion. But I really believe this is the only way this gets done. No one's going to care to vote for $20 million or $30 million to make the library better and to correct deficiencies. Not in Newington, not with the political leadership we have now. What is going to make them want to spend the money is that it has these great features.
So I think, Andy, there's a balance that we have to find here. That is the balance between great features and, oh my God, that's so frivolous. Why are they even talking about that kind of stuff? And maybe you and I should have a separate conversation about that. When I was a kid, again, another anecdote, you probably don't want to hear these at this point, but I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a working class town. I went to a Carnegie library as a kid. And in that little Carnegie library, which was, you probably can imagine what it looked like, there was a little space downstairs that was called the Wonder Workshop. And I actually thought about writing that into this plan, because that's the one thing I remember about that Carnegie library is being able to go downstairs to the Wonder Workshop and play with do science experiments and look at rocks and fossils and all those kinds of things. But it was, it was about as low key as you can imagine, but that's what stuck with me about that experience. So I think we don't want the plan to be seen as, oh my God, they're like throwing everything but the kitchen sink into this plan. And do we really need this? Versus here are some examples of things that we're thinking about. And in particular, as the design evolves, we would be more specific about them, but I would rather use them as examples right now, as opposed to saying, this is the way it's going to be. And we're not like that in Newington. That's too much for our town. So, and you guys know that.
Leslie, I love your anecdote, because I went to the Faxon Branch Library in Elmwood, which was the south side of West Hartford. And we had the same sort of thing. But if we get mired down in the needs versus want debate, we lose. We will lose if this is reduced to only what we need. It has to be what the people want. And I'm going to shut up because we'll be here all night.
Okay, so I think you and I should have a separate conversation about this and strike a balance here.
And so this is Diane. I want to make sure that we have time for every board member to speak. Andy feels very strongly about his opinions and his list of wants. I think there are some good things on that list. If we can incorporate somewhere, certainly in the narrative of what's possible in a library that's not as constrained as our library is now. I think we need to do needs. I think we need to leave political comments out of this. I think we really need to talk about our library, our town, what we need, what we can see going forward. I want to allow the other board members to speak and share things. We know that that's your list. We know that you feel very strongly that you need every one of those things on there to get the library through. I don't know that that's everybody's feeling. So you spoke first. I appreciate now that you're going to give others the opportunity to speak. So I'm going to just go down the list here. And then Karen, if you can keep me honest with the people that are calling in so that they can share comments as well, I would appreciate that. So Anna, if you would like to make any comments.
Well, why don't we start at the other end, because maybe if somebody else has questions that might cover one of my 10 or 11 questions that I have.
Okay, well then, Fiona, you are up. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, even impressions that you would like to share at this point, we would be interested in hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to, Fiona York. I'm just going to say that this being my first year on the board, and I have not been a part of a conversation. So I do think, in thinking like, not long-term, but in the course of the process here, that the term sustainability is, I think, will be huge, especially when it comes to a referendum. The library location, with it being the center of town, but also very close proximity to lots of neighborhoods, is great. That's a great part of the library in this town. But I think we have to, really not only just use that term, but also talk about how that is going to happen in the process of the renovation. I also, I need to mull this over a little more now, too, having heard from the architects and Leslie. But I think that obviously solar panels are great. More parking, of course. I do have some technical questions about sort of like how this might affect the road behind the library. I'm not sure if maybe I'm not seeing it. It won't affect. Okay. But I'm going to leave it at that. So I'm going to mull it over a little bit more, and then maybe also some other questions will be answered that I didn't think of. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Pauline, you're next.
Okay, this is Pauline Crook. I do like the concept. I like the open windows. I love the solar panels. I am one of those types of people who want the library to this addition to be 50 years, maybe, because we just saw how quickly you use up the space from the last reiteration of the library, and how libraries have changed, the philosophy of the libraries have changed. I think we do need maybe another meeting room. This town does not have that ability right now. And we want to have people come in, have organizations come in and use the facility. And I think at least one more meeting room would be necessary. Other than that, I don't have too many, complaints. I don't know about the handicapped accessibility, whether or not we could be a little bit more friendly. But other than that, I think everything seems to be okay.
Thank you, Pauline. We'll move on to Christine.
Christine Shushan. I did read this when it first came to me. The solar panels are nice. One of the things with solar, you have to be aware if there's issues with the solar panels, what will happen to the roof if it has to be corrected. Will the roof be damaged when the solar panels are taken off to repair? That's one of the concerns. If it was into my home, that's a concern. They say they cover certain things and then it's not covered. You have to really be aware of that. The green roof is nice. I think it would be nice if something, it could be of use, not just a green roof. Something up there like in New York City, they have their greenway. That would be nice. Just something up there. If you're going to have it green, why is it green? I like the open spaces. I just want to make sure that the open spaces aren't lost spaces. A big thing, as Pauline said, is to be in compliance with handicap needs, and not just kind of wash over that, because more and more, we do have an elderly clientele and it's just going to keep getting that way, and people with strollers and a lot of people going in and out. You have to make sure that there's accessible needs met. That's really what I saw, and the meeting spaces. I really think I didn't think there was enough of that, that was limited. And you have to think again, it is a library and there needs to be books, not just everything else. So, and what that requirement is, not just books, media, and the things that go along with all of that. It's a learning space, not just a meeting space. Thank you.
Leanne Mankey. I have been involved in this process because I am on the committee. And my apologies if we've just there's a lot of information for those who haven't been. A lot of the things that you're addressing in terms of meeting spaces, you have to come back to the fact this is a conceptual. View this plan as a box, and then we fill the box. So whether it's 4 meeting rooms or 5 meeting rooms or whatever, that's something that is farther along. This is more about conceptual, what we want this to do. I am very pleased with what's come forward. I know that we talk about this as being needs versus wants, but I do think it does address a lot of the wants in the sense that a lot of this is multi-purpose. So that if we had a space that was, for example, as Leslie was speaking to, magazines, in 10 years when magazines are no longer, we have something else in there. Another thing that we talked about potentially was in the teen space. It doesn't have to be completely dedicated to teens because the teens are in there after school and on the weekends. During the day, it can be perhaps meeting spaces for people who are working from their homes and needing spaces, things like that. So, I mean, we have to open ourselves up to utilizing things for more than one purpose, and also to be able to be flexible in terms of the usage. And if the space is built in a certain way, we can make it so that the space can then adapt as we go forward and get more life from the building. Obviously, the space itself is finite, and we want to make sure we have enough of it to go forward. I am in favor of listing some of the more unique requests that have been put forward in the report. I don't know that putting them in concept design is the way to go. It's kind of like saying about the staff room, that's where friends and trustees space would be. We would be kind of under the staff auspices in terms of where we'd have a designated space. We just have to make sure there's enough to cover that. That's all. And that's as we move forward. But as I said, just don't get locked into the room is here and this room is here and this room is on the other. This is concept, and to be able to show people what we could do. I hesitate to go to some of the things that Andy has listed. Not that I don't think they're wonderful ideas. I just don't know that I would hate to go out and try and buy a Cadillac. And because of we're looking for so much that we get shut down completely. That's my, and again, I'm being really truthful here. We have to sell this to a community. And if we come out with things that people say, the word is very good, Leslie, frivolous, that those, not that some would consider some of these items frivolous, but some would. How do we sell this to people? And we have to sell it to community. It's not so much the politics of it. We have to sell it to the community. This price tag is worth paying. So those are my thoughts.
Hi, this is Anna Eddy. I have not been on the committee. I have not been privy to a lot of the conversations that have been going on regarding the reimagined library for the 21st century. But I have been involved with the library for quite a long time, going back to when we first started talking about an expansion in 2008, and it was called the Shovel Ready Project back then. So, you know, I've been around the block with this a number of times, and with the number of times feeling ever so close to reaching our goal, but then getting cut short. But in hindsight, it's a good thing because the world has evolved, technology has evolved, COVID has evolved, and it's changed the whole way we look at things. So, you know, now it's probably not a bad thing that we've been put on the shelf for so long. A couple of my questions are procedural, and again, because the committee hasn't met, or I wasn't invited to any of the committee meetings, I couldn't ask the kinds of questions I wanted to ask until now. And then the second part of it is looking at the drawings, triggered some thoughts in terms of our initial needs list, which anyway, so I'll get there in a minute. I'm looking at the June 1, 22 memo from Library Development Solutions and Andrew Berman, architect, under concept design. I was curious about the statement, and I'm going to read this as a quote. The actual design for the library would be informed by a sustained design process in partnership with your architect. So does that mean the work that Andrew Berman has done is for this for the concept part of it is just going to be put aside, and that money is quote wasted, and we start all over again with a firm? Do we go out to bid with other firms?
You have to do that.
We have to do that. Okay, so
Those
that
are
was
good questions, and they kind of get to the next step part of this discussion. And we can talk about that now after you.
I guess I shouldn't have used the word wasted.
No, not wasted. So I think that, you know, you probably have enough here maybe with some additional work from Andrew and his team to prepare the materials that you need to go out to referendum. If you've had a chance, and I would highly suggest that a group of you go talk to the folks in Bloomfield and take a look at the materials they developed for their referendum campaign. They didn't have much more than this. They had a couple of concept drawings from the architect and a site plan and some additional written materials that they used as part of their campaign. So I think you've probably got enough here. And we can talk about what you need going forward in terms of communication plan with the community for the referendum. But the next step is when that referendum gets passed, you would go back and work with Andrew, if he is your chosen architect, or whomever you choose as an architect, to get into design development and really start to define those spaces very specifically. So
Okay.
you're asking the right question. I think we're just, right now, this is, I think, Andrew, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think this is probably enough to get them out there, right?
Well, thank you for
Yes.
explaining that process. I'm a little clueless in terms of going beyond this initial
Yeah.
phase.
Yes. Yeah, I
Um,
agree with what Leslie said, and you know, the statement that you read in part is that we're not presuming that we have an ongoing job with you. This is part of the process to help you define your future project and kind of figure out the procedure to get to the point of implementing the project. This sets up a lot of the strategic thinking that you will take forward as a library community. And it's something that we, if we continue to work with you, would certainly build upon. And if you, in the end, elected to work with another architecture and design team, you would build upon it nonetheless. This is part of a process. There's no waste. It's all iterative and going
my
forward.
apologies for using that word. It becomes the building blocks for whoever
Correct.
wins the bid for the architectural phase of this.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for that explanation. Moving on to the project cost estimate document that was provided. I'm seeing 3 columns: concept design, reduced area 1, reduced area 2. Is there some backup documentation that shows me exactly what the changes are? I mean, I'm guessing the most of it is in the construction cost because that's where the biggest difference is of $6 million. Is there some supporting materials that shows me what the difference is between the concept design and option 1 and option 2?
Vinci, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Well, option 1 and option 2 basically is suggesting a reduced area of the interior addition size. There is no other designs for these options. These are just suggestions of how we can reduce the project cost.
So in other words, the footprint gets smaller and we lose some of the space
Right.
within.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's straightforward. All right. So I spent most of my time looking at the drawings today. It was the first time I saw them. And so I do have some questions that were not covered by the people who came before me, the other board members. And so hopefully you'll indulge me. And most of them are on floor 1, if we could start there. I noticed that there were 2 book drops on the legend. They were number 2 and number 7. I couldn't find number 7. And I'm curious to know if one of these book drops is a drive up. Or could be a drive up, let's put it that way, because I know this is all conceptual, but I don't want to lose those concepts.
Yes, the answer is that.
And could you bring it up on the screen?
Oh, I see 2. It's there.
No, I
Who has
found
control
2.
over-
I'm looking for 7.
Oh, you're looking for 7.
And I'm seeing everybody's living rooms or bedrooms.
Vinci or Fatima, do you have control over
I
the
can
screen?
share.
Okay.
I thought 7 was down in the parking lot when we talked about it, but now I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Okay, so the intention was for there to be a book drop at the parking area, so where those 2 cars are, there could be a book drop, and then another at the end, the point of entry, where the 7 is. Where the 7 is.
Within the building. Is that
Yes.
what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And is there?
So these
is
are.
Number 2, is number 2? Could number 2 be a drive up, especially for those people who
Yes,
have
absolutely.
walking? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. I just want to, put a sticky note on this.
Sure. And I want to, if you don't mind, I would like to say, this question is a good example. These are very particular and very important parts of the library. And these are all the sorts of questions and issues that get discussed, tried, and ultimately provided for in a final plan.
Okay.
And that goes to the number of meeting rooms, the type of meeting rooms, the location of the video board, whether it's projection or backlit or all of the above, whether there's a hearing loop. All these things become part of a very thorough design process, which is an open discussion with your library community.
Okay. So I have 9 more questions,
good questions,
Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're gonna, and we do have to be aware that there are people that are not in this room that also have questions. So again, it's a conceptual design. If you have items that you want to make sure have the yellow sticky note, that's a good phrase to use. Please go ahead with your questions, but let's just keep this moving. And if it's something that we need to note as we go forward, that's what we should do.
I'm trying.
Thanks, Anne.
The community room, I read in the report that it's going to potentially seat 150. I think that's 2.5 times of the current space, which is 60. I just want to make sure that as a board, we have a conversation. Is that enough seating capacity? I know it's a big jump from 60 to 150, but is it enough when we have a Haino concert? I noticed in space number 14, the quiet reading room, in this concept, it's adjacent or almost adjacent to the children's room. And I'm hoping that if that's where we end up, there's a lot of soundproofing. And following up on that, on page 15 of the Reimagined document, there's a reference to children's activity space, but I don't see it on this drawing.
Right. So as I was looking at the plans and writing, I was thinking the children's space needs to be a little bit larger. So I threw that in there to prompt that discussion. I'm sorry. I didn't ask Andrew to redraw it though.
Okay, so you put the sticky note on there. Andy Brecker made a mention about the toilet facilities for the staff, and I'm looking for where those private toilet facilities are. I don't know if it's something to stay or go, but from my perspective and being behind the scenes in the library, I think it would be it would behoove us to offer them private space rather than shared space. And is that included somewhere, or am I going to have to?
If you can see where the
am I going to
cursor
have to
is.
arm wrestle Andy? Okay, so that's it there on the first floor.
Yes.
That's I know, but it wasn't identified in the legend. That's all I'm trying to say. There's no.
Well, to be clear, we have provided for 2 accessible back of house staff space toilet spaces.
Okay.
And I want to also say that everything here is imagined to be completely accessible for people with accessibility issues, but of course also the elderly, for mothers, for
Okay.
toddlers. That's all part of the overall ambition of this and any library project.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that in the basement, there's there's a placeholder for the mechanical room. Is there a placeholder for a secure computer hub? I did not see that anywhere.
So like an IT room?
I'm sorry?
An IT room where the.
An IT room. Yeah,
Yes, an IT room, yes.
yes, the IT room would be in one of the staff areas, so it'd be a kind of back of house, but easy to access.
Okay, so for me, it would be important for me that you identify that.
Okay.
In the staff workspace, in the reimagined document on page 41, there's reference to the space for the library director and for the library director's assistant, but I didn't see anything for assistant library director. I don't want to lose her. She needs a desk. She needs a space. So if we can make sure that that's included. And for the second floor, this is to be done. Oh, I'll forget that. And there right now, oh, I'm all set. I've covered all my questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. Andy, you've already spoken. Lisa, I'm going to ask who's on Zoom who would like to speak. I'll give Scott, I believe, is out there. Scott, if you have some thoughts or ideas or just impressions that you would like to share, we'd appreciate it. Okay. The Facility and Site Committee is the committee that worked on this from the beginning. So not every one of the board members has been in this meeting from day one. So that's why there seems to be some folks with more knowledge and other folks that are just beginning to see and understand some of this information. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Like many committee assignments, you start with the committee and then you bring it out to the greater board. Maureen, do you have any questions or thoughts that you wanted to bring up at this point?
No, because being the simple person that I am, I do understand, Andrew Berman's narrative about this being conceptual and that there is flexibility within this design. And that, for conversation's sake, if this were to be the plan tomorrow, then we, the board, the staff is more so, then that's where those decisions are made as to where things really happen within those spaces. And Leanne made a good point about the existing space as designed being flexible and that we have to be flexible. I think her example was teen space. Mm-hmm. It's not being used by the teens, it can be used by somebody else. Sure. And I think we've already done a good job doing that with what little we have to work with today. I appreciate the work that Andrew and his staff and Leslie have done. I understand that this is not the finished product because we don't know what's going to happen. Andy Brecker wants the town to be wowed, the citizens of Newington. And I think that on the other hand of that being wowed is that they're also concerned about taxes and costs and stuff. So I think we can wow them without being outrageous, perhaps. But that's, again, just my opinion. I think everybody has made some wonderful points. And, you know, we have not just our staff, but we have 2 members of our board who are librarians. So they understand a library differently than other people, perhaps, and the needs of the space and stuff. So we have a great minds on the board, collectively and individually. So I think that we have a great bones with which to work right now. Guess it's all
Thank
over
you.
with the shouting.
Thank you, Maureen. So again, a lot of work was put into this, the way that the process works for those of us who were not in the initial meetings. We dusted off the old plan. That's where we started from. We tried to put in new ideas and things that we had learned, you know, what's different since COVID. The idea of having the conceptual plan was just that. I think when you have, you know, a 30-page document to read, if you've been hungering for your library's renovation and expansion since 2008, you're going to read every single page of that. But if you're flipping through a paper, or if you're flipping through, you know, stacks and stacks of reports from all departments and all places in town, we felt that the conceptual design would help people imagine what could be. You know, you could talk about an expansion and they might just see, you know, a brick building expanding out, but it can be so much more. And we do need our library to be so much more. And it does need to be the hub of our town for meeting space and going through that. Leslie and Andrew, I commend you and your teams for what you've put together. I know everybody I saw open and saw the conceptual design were like, wow, I never thought, and we're the ones most invested in it. So to that end, I think the conceptual design did what we needed, and it opened people's eyes to what's possible. We could sit here and, you know, we're a little bit more detailed oriented because we've been dreaming about this for so long, and we want to make sure that all the little things that have been bothering us that are missing in terms of our efficiency and providing service to our town, you know, we want to make sure are in there, and they will be in there in the next renovations. This is, as Leslie says, what we need to bring things forward to a referendum. How do we go out to the public? Because we could spend forever getting this perfect, but that's not the stage that we're in right now. We're in the stage of what's possible, and how can we get the town behind what's possible, reimagining it, and being willing to fund it because they see the benefit in it. And that's really what the goal of this plan is to see the benefit of it and to be able to move forward. Leslie and Andrew, I would ask if you had any other comments that you wanted to share at this point.
I'd like to just talk a little bit and give you some ideas in terms of how to move forward from where we are right now to referendum. And, you know, you can certainly adapt this, but I think one thing you may want to do is take this to the town or to some key people in the town and get some feedback from them in terms of, you know, is this with the cost, the projected cost, about the plan. So, you know, you want to get some key members of your town council and town leadership on board with this. You need to pay attention to the mechanics of what you need to do to get on the ballot if you really want to go on the ballot in November, or if it's another time. I mean, you know, there's pros and cons of trying to get on a midterm election ballot when everybody's really angry about everything. So you may want to think about timing on that. You should also be thinking about what kind of collateral material you're going to need. So I won't speak for Andrew, but if there's something that you really want to change about this plan before you go public with it, you should talk to him and get those changes made. One thing he did for me, and this was primarily for fundraising purposes, is, Andrew, you remember that little book you made for me with it was kind of a lookbook of what the project was going to be. He created this lovely little, I don't remember, it was small, but it was something I could hand to people that I was talking to, and they could immediately see the images of what we were talking about, but it also had some narrative attached to it so that they could understand the concepts. So I would encourage you to think about that. Start planning meetings with key stakeholders in town, and not just the usual suspects, but everyone you can think of who could be an influencer, and talk to other people about why this project would be an important thing to fund. And really think about developing a get out the vote campaign. So again, this depends on the timing of your referendum, but how are you going to get people out, right? How are you going to get them to vote, and really getting them excited, which could be a number of meetings around town and sharing the plans and the ideas and the excitement that you have about taking on a project like this. I did mention already earlier that you could take to the folks in Bloomfield who ran a very successful referendum campaign. So I would advise you to talk to them. And maybe you want to ask Andrew and his team to provide some additional elevations, interior elevations, which would help make that interior space come alive as well. So those are my thoughts. And we can be helpful to you in whatever way you need. So keep that in mind, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you. Andrew, was there anything else that you wanted to add at this point?
Yeah, just one thought I wanted to share, which is that when looking at the plans, and when each of you shares the plans with your colleagues and neighbors, I think something important to mention is that this library is showing a lot of seating, a lot of tables, a lot of space for people. And that's the biggest message that I hope can come through here, is that in contrast to what you have now, which is limited in what you can provide for people, the ambition here is to provide for a lot of people of different ages, different needs, different wants. And that, I think, is the great promise of the public library. And then all the programming specifics about what exactly happens in the space will get developed in the design process. But the big ambition at the get-go is that the whole community, a really expanded vision of that community is going to be able to enjoy the library in the future. And that's why we show the furniture, is to show that this is a place for lots of people. And that is, I think, the single biggest transformation available in reimagining the library.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I think people are maybe worn out, but certainly going through. I appreciate everyone hanging in as long as they have for this. If there's no other questions or thoughts last minute that folks need to do, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which would be public participation. And I thank you all for joining in and staying with us through this. I was very pleased with my board for being ready at 7:45, as we said we would. We really raced through the rest of our agenda to be there. But again, overall, I think this is quite the quality product. You have to forgive us for those of us who want all the little nitty gritty details right now, because we're so excited about the possibilities. So I think that your guidance in helping us to imagine what can be there and then following the next steps is really important, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You want us to stay on for the public participation part?
If you don't mind, public participation, is there anyone online? And we have one person in the audience. Do you have any questions or anything you'd like to bring up at this point? Go ahead, Donna.
I'm looking very simplistically at the bottom of page 4 with the numbers, the library 2022 snapshot numbers. And of course, when you look at our population in the town and the current number of library card holders, at least over 18,600. I know that do not. And of course, I'm sure that there's a number of those that are very young children, of course, and infants and toddlers and such. But I'm thinking in terms of when this is brought forward as a referendum and spoken about, how would we ensure that that percentage would greatly increase for the number of cardholders, and also the average visits per day at 611 is quite low. We definitely want to discuss with certainty how that percentage would increase per day with specifics. I think that would be in our best interest to really focus on increasing that participation. So that was one point that stuck out to me that I wanted to speak about. And then the other is really more towards the architectural design process. Just a very quick backstory here. I'm an educator, formerly in public school system, but I also taught at the University of St. Joe's at the graduate level, special education. I taught many times the universal design for learning, which is an instructional mindset, I don't want to say philosophy, where curriculums and such units of study are developed with all various types of learners with challenges built in. It's not that you take a curriculum and then you retrofit it and accommodate it afterwards for all the different challenges, whether it be visual or auditory or physical or cognitive. And so I'm wondering, in this design process, if you did indeed utilize the universal design for architecture, and where you're actively including with equity, some of the physical challenges were mentioned and brought out, and elderly, of course, but I'm wondering if that is how that's going to be addressed, and if that is built in to the design.
The spirit is certainly built in to the master plan. The master plan is supposed to be accessible, flexible, accommodating, and inspirational. And I should underscore this. Andy brought it up. We kind of use words to describe kind of meeting the needs, but the motivation from the architectural side here is to also create inspiring quality space that communicates to everybody their own individual importance and their importance as being part of a community. And that goes for people of different needs and different expectations.
Does that help, Tom?
Yes, but I do think that, especially parents who have children.
I could not hear the first part of the question very well, and so I don't know. If I didn't answer that, it's only because I could not hear well.
I was talking about universal design for architecture and just how all those various needs are built in and not an afterthought.
Yes, those would all be part of the basic conceptualization of the design, and be part of the long-term potential of a piece of architecture, and not added at the end.
So again, I think that's probably another yellow sticky note to make sure that that's there along with the other things. I know, from an architecture standpoint, that should be in there. Again, what we've seen is conceptual. It's great point to bring up so that it stays front of mind when we're doing things. Just like you never want to go back and say, oh yeah, where did we put that air conditioning unit, right? You want to make sure that you have certain things that are basic for everybody out there. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. And if there's no other questions, Lisa and Karen, did you have any questions that you wanted to bring up at this point? No? Okay. So then I will thank you for your attendance this evening, Leslie, Andy, Andrew, and it's hard with two Andrews, Andys. I'm trying to maintain the same name for the same people, but we appreciate you being here tonight and presenting and staying on for the questions at the end. So thank you very much. Very helpful.
Thank you.
And then at this point, with public participation being concluded, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. It's Anna.
Anna moved for the motion. Do I have a second?
Chris Yushian, second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
I love this question. Opposed? Hearing no one opposed, I conclude the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Leslie, we'll be in touch. This is Maureen.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Talk to you